But whatever is happening in the world right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the result of what took place on one day back in 2001, to be exact, on September 11, 2001, because what we are seeing in Lebanon is basically a ramification of what took place in Iraq. And what took place in Iraq was the resultant of what took place in New York. Because, as most of you know, now we will be speaking about 9/11 with our guest, who is a researcher in that field, who does not believe that it was 19 Arabs who very much committed this horrendous act. And he is he's petitioning the United Nations to start an investigation based on human rights. As you know, 3,000 people died, and the United Nations very much took a decision that they will pursue and bring the perpetrators to justice. So far, no one has been arrested. So far, no one has been charged with that crime. Names of people that we don't even see, but we hear of. And this is that's what's happening. Now, we have talked about 9/11 many shows. If you are following this program and our radio program, you know that we have talked about about this particular area many times. But today we will again, and we are not, 9/11, as long as 9/11 is around us, as long as the effects of 9/11 is out there, and as long as 9/11 remains an unresolved mystery, we will continue bringing you people who, again, don't believe that 9/11 was perpetrated by 19 Arabs with box cutters. And my guest today tonight is Elias Davidsson. He is a global research contributing editor. He lives in Reykjavik, Iceland, and he is actually Elias, as we say it in Arabic, but Elias Davidsson was born in Palestine in 1941. His parents were born in Germany, but had to emigrate to Palestine due to the Nazi persecution of Jews. Elias lived his first years in Baqaa, a neighborhood of Jerusalem, where Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived in peace side by side. These early years left a deep mark on him. He lived in France, Germany, and the United States until he settled finally in Iceland. Elias has for many years been involved in activism and research regarding social and global justice, peace, anti-racism, and human rights. He is the co-founder of the association Iceland-Palestine and a supporter of democratic state in the whole of historic Palestine for Muslims, Christians, and Jews. He regards himself as an anti-Zionist and rejects the existence of a Jewish state as incompatible with human rights norms. His writings include articles on multinational corporations, the IMF, and the World Bank, the Palestine question, Zionism, economic sanctions, and international law. In 2002, Elias started research on the events of September 11, 2001, and founded the Iceland chapter of the 9/11 Truth Movement. Do we still have the caller? Okay, I'll tell you what. We're gonna go to the phones. We will come back to Elias in a second, but I don't want to keep this caller on hold. Let's go with Christy on one. Go ahead, Christy.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Tillawi.
Yes, you are on the air.
Oh, okay. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about Barack Obama and speak to that situation a little bit, about who's actually controlling that campaign and what's behind all of that with them.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the call. Unfortunately, Christy, I'll tell you what, we will visit this issue again at the end of the show if we have time, but we're going to be talking about Barack Obama on this show many, many times. This is not the end. And yes, there are some people behind it that everyone needs to know who these people are. But we'll talk about that in a different show. But what I was trying to show parallel is what Jeremiah Wright said. It's not really a horrible thing. I disagree with him saying and using the phrases that he used, but you have to listen to the whole sermon. Sure, he called it black theology. Sure, he used different phrases. Yes, because people are ignorant that in the black community there are certain phrases that they use that is not used in the mainstream media. In the mainstream media it looks horrible, but this was at a black church, black theology, and we will discuss that later. But this person that I'm talking about, Rod Parsley, he said, it's a million times more horrible than what Jeremiah Wright will ever say. Jeremiah Wright did not say about killing a whole people who are the Muslims. Jeremiah Wright did not say that America was born because of just the main reason that it was born is to kill Muslims and to kill that religion. But you haven't seen anyone talking about that. I'll tell you what, we are going to go to our guest who has been patiently holding, and also it is after 1 o'clock in the morning in Iceland, so we really appreciate him having the patience with us to even come on the show. So I don't want to keep him on hold for a long time. Elias, thank you and welcome to the show.
Hello, Hesham. Hello. Ma salama.
Actually, ma salama is when you leave. Salam alaikum when you first come in.
Salam alaikum.
Okay. Elias, it's interesting what you have, and we're not going to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian issue. I want to concentrate mainly so we can get the grasp of what you are trying to do and why you are trying to do it. Now, you have been researching 9/11, I believe, since 2002. You are a music composer, you are a writer, you are a human rights activist. What really got you in 9/11?
Well, basically, like many people, I believed initially, I believed the official theory or official accusations that the events of 9/11 were perpetrated by some Muslim, by Al-Qaeda, by some Muslim terrorist organization, as a kind of revenge for U.S. foreign policies. Well, that was the common belief of many people, progressive people, who believe, well, some people now really went all the way and gave a smack to the United States. Well, I believe that. Of course, I was opposed. I am opposing terrorism, and I have always opposed terrorism. But I believe that this was a kind of a revenge or kind of a reaction. However, in 2002, I came across a book by a French author called Thierry Messon, who was one of the first people who showed that there were a lot of contradictions in the official account on 9/11. And I found that very interesting. So I began to look at his sources. And I checked these sources, and I found his sources quite reliable. So I began to search for myself to read more about the issue. And the more I researched on 9/11, the more I discovered that the official account could not stand on its own feet. Now, in the last few months, I focused on an aspect of 9/11 which some people have focused initially on, but have neglected to pursue that issue. I began to look again, to review again the basic ingredients of the official account, namely the fact or the allegation that Muslims, Arabs, boarded 4 aircraft, hijacked those aircraft and flew them into the known landmarks. So I looked for the evidence for that all. And what I found is that there is not the slightest evidence to substantiate these allegations. In fact, these allegations are totally fabrication. There is today no evidence whatsoever that any Arabs boarded these 4 planes and hijacked them. So the official account of 9/11 should be dismissed outright, and those who accuse Muslims and Arabs for this crime should be shamed for defaming innocent people, innocent nations for this crime.
Okay, now,
because
Elias, let me just stop you there for 1 second.
Yes.
Now, what about these 19 people that we have seen on TV? The FBI the next day put these 19 pictures, or a couple of days later, and then we have a picture of Muhammad Atta actually in boarding the plane in I guess whatever it was, Detroit or whatever it was.
Well, let me just clarify. First of all, clarify a little bit how I approached the subject. Well, I think that everybody who listens to this program knows that 9/11 was a crime. It was a mass murder. Now, when you approach a crime, one of the first things you do is to find out who was on the scene of the crime. It doesn't really matter whether the people who are suspected of the crime were somewhere else. However, what we're concerned of is whether anybody saw them come into the scene of the crime, or whether there is any indication that they were on the scene of the crime. Now, in the case of 9/11, there are 5 classes of evidence which could have been used and could have been produced to prove that these 19 people were at the scene of the crime, namely in the planes. These 5 classes of evidence are passenger lists, or sometimes called flight manifests, if people want. The second one would be boarding cards or boarding passes, or the stubs of boarding passes. The third evidence would be testimonies by airline personnel, airline employees who were checking the boarding cards and saw people board the plane through the gate. The fourth class of evidence would be CCTV recordings from the boarding gate. And the fifth class of evidence would be identification of the bodily remains from the crash sites. Now, the thing is that the U.S. government has not produced any of these classes of evidence at all. None of these 5 classes of evidence has ever been produced. We don't have any authenticated passenger lists on which the names of the alleged hijackers would appear. There are no boarding cards nowhere to be found. No person, not a single person, has testified to have observed the boarding of the planes. There are no recordings of the boarding of the planes, and there is no positive identification of the mortal remains of the hijackers.
Okay. Elias, we are right now looking, and our viewers are looking at a picture of supposedly Muhammad Atta and somebody else behind him, where it seems to be a boarding gate.
Okay, now let me explain that. They have two video recordings have been shown on TV. One is a video recording from Portland Airport, Portland. It is supposed, or it is purported to show Muhammad Atta in Portland, but he did not hijack a plane from Portland. He is said to have hijacked a plane from Logan Airport in Boston. So there are no pictures from Boston showing Muhammad Atta. So
okay, what about his passport found in New York with the rebel?
Well, first of all, it was not the passport of Muhammad Atta, but from another alleged hijackers. This is just a misunderstanding.
Okay.
Now, this passport, there was a passport which was found on the street a few minutes after the crash of the airplanes. Now, the fact that the passport was found there does not mean that the owner of the passport boarded the plane. To be able to show that the person boarded on the plane, you have to show that his name appeared on a certified passenger list. Somebody would have to tear his boarding card, and if there is no evidence that the person boarded the plane, then we have to conclude that the passport was planted.
Okay. Elias, we have covered many of this, but let's get to the most important part of if the Arabs, or these 19 Arabs, of course, and I'm not going to ask you what happened to them and where are they now, but who do you think, if they did not do it, then who did it?
Well, first of all, in a criminal investigation, we have first of all to find out, you see, we as ordinary people, we don't have the investigative capacity or the right to subpoena documents and witnesses. We can, however, expose the official account as a total lie, which I have been doing. I've said the U.S. government is accusing 19 innocent people of mass murder. Now, the U.S. government has nerve to accuse people of mass murder without producing any evidence whatsoever that these people committed the murder. I think this is what we call defamation, and I think that every person who has a nerve to accuse 19 innocent Muslims of mass murder should be shamed by the Muslim community in the United States and demanded either to produce evidence for that kind of accusation or publicize an apology.
Well, where are these people now? I mean, let me go back to the question I didn't want to ask you.
I don't know where they are. It is not my it is not our duty to prove where these people have disappeared. There are 19 people with names. They have disappeared into thin air. We don't know where they went. We only know one thing, that the U.S. government has alleged that they went onto these planes, while the U.S. government has not provided us with any single proof that they went, when they came to the airport, if they came to the airport, that they went onto these planes. We have never seen any proof of that. And until we see this kind of proof, we have no right to accuse any of these people of mass murder.
Okay. Now,
this is just a question. This is just a basic principle of legal principle that a person is innocent unless proven guilty.
Okay. Now, you're petitioning the United Nations to start an investigation of what? What is, I mean, the United States...
Let me clarify.
Sure.
In the United Nations, there is a special rapporteur on extrajudicial assassinations. Now, one part of his mandate is to check whether governments have investigated properly cases of mass extrajudicial assassinations. Now, 9/11 was clearly a case of arbitrary and extrajudicial assassination of 3,000 people. 3,000 people were murdered in cold blood on 9/11, and it is the duty of the state, in this case the government of the United States, to adequately investigate that kind of murder. Now, the U.S. government did not adequately investigate the murder. Just on the contrary. First of all, the U.S. government did not want to investigate this mass murder.
Okay, Elias, just hold that thought for a second, and
yes.
I'm going to be like interfering here so our viewers can understand what is happening. Now, I'm holding in my hand a book that we discussed on this show many, many times. It's the 9/11 Commission report. Now, there is, and I did write to my congressman asking him that we do need to investigate 9/11, because if we can get a handle on exactly what took place in 9/11, we can solve all the other problems. Now, he wrote me back and he said a committee of 10 people, they have met, they have studied this thing, they researched it, and they came out with it. We have the 9/11 Commission report. This is not good enough for you?
The 9/11 report is a masterwork of deception. It's a cover-up report. It is a report basically whitewashing the U.S. government, and even the title of the report itself is prejudiced. The title of the report is, and it's a 9/11 Commission of Inquiry about attacks on the United States. Now, if somebody says it was an attack on the United States, he already assumes, before the commission even met together, that it was foreign people who attacked the United States. Now, this is, of course, already telling the commission exactly where to look for. The commission, of course, departed from the first day on the assumption that it was caused by Al-Qaeda based from outside the United States, without even looking at the evidence. Now, there is not a single item of evidence pointing that these attacks were perpetrated by people coming from abroad, because as I said before, there is no single proof that any foreigners committed these acts. There is no proof that any Arabs went into these planes. And so if these Arabs did not go into the planes, then the official story must be a lie. Now, I've been offering a price of 10,000 UK pounds, which is about $15,000. I am offering this price to anybody who can prove that Muslims committed this crime. Until today, not a single person has come forward to seek this price, because nobody has any access to any kind of proof. Neither U.S. government, nor you, nor me, nor any journalist. Because this is just a lie, and today the Muslim community in the United States and all over the world should begin to call the bluff, to demand, not to demand the truth, because the truth is clear. The truth is that there is no Muslims involved in this crime. The truth is that the United States government is responsible for the crime, and the...
Okay, now let me ask you this. Since we don't know who and why are you saying the United States government is involved in it?
Well, I tell you the following thing. If the United States government is covering up the crime, is lying to us about who boarded these planes, and the United States government is lying and in fact justifying attacks on Afghanistan on a contrived story, then the United States government must be regarded as a prime suspect for the crime.
Now, let me just stop you here for a second, Elias. Now, are you telling me that the airline companies are working with the government to withhold these names? I mean, the passenger roster, these tapes, are they working with the United States government to hide it? I'm sure they have a computer record that these people boarded these planes. How do you explain that?
Well, the American Airlines, the leaders of American Airlines and the leaders of United Airlines are, in my opinion, complicit in the cover-up. I have communicated with American Airlines a few times. They refuse categorically to send me even a copy of the original passenger lists. They send me a list of passengers of American airline flight AA-77, which was allegedly crashed on the Pentagon. I asked for the list of all the passengers on that plane. They sent me a list, a typed list, not a copy of the original, but a typed list, on a computer typed list, and there were no Arab names. So I asked, where are the names of the hijackers? So they said they were redacted. So the list which I got from American Airlines did not include the names of the so-called hijackers, because these names don't appear. And I asked again and again to get photocopy or some kind of photocopy of the original passenger list, and they refused. They have consistently refused to release the original copies of the original passenger lists all these years, because the American Airlines and the United Airlines have been complicit in organizing this crime, and that's why they don't do it. I also asked American Airlines for the names of the personnel who were checking the boarding cards in the airports, because these names have never been released, and these people have never been interviewed neither by the FBI, nor by the 9/11 Commission, nor by the media. These people who are the last ones who allegedly saw the people board on the aircraft, these 8 people, 2 for each plane, were never interviewed by anybody, because these people did not see anybody, because these people were not there. There was nobody boarding.
Are you saying that the 9/11 Commission, they did not interview these people?
No, they did not. You can look at the 9/11 Commission. You look it up from the first page onto the last page in the footnotes. You look for all the names, for all the interviews. You will never find that, neither in the 9/11 Commission report nor in the reports of the staff reports of the Commission, which are even more detailed.
By the way, I did. I was just asking you that question. I did, and it's not in there. Which is, I mean, the first thing you would think is the producing the passengers list to prove that these people were actually on there. Now, let me ask you this. We have actually a video of some Israelis who took those pictures, and in an Israeli television interview, they said, we were there to film the event, and we're looking at these guys now. How can you tell me what exactly happened there? How come these people were there to film the event?
Well, here I must say that I have no explanation for that. I can only speculate. When I talked to you before about the evidence about the 19 Arabs and so on, I was talking about facts. There is no evidence that these 19 people boarded the aircraft. Absolutely no evidence. This is a fact, which it cannot be denied. This is just a fact, a clear fact. I am not speculating about anything. The official story of 9/11 is a fraud. This is a fact. It is not what I believe, it is a fact, because no Arab boarded these planes. Now, when you're asking me about the Israelis, I know that they were arrested. I know that exactly the story. However, I don't know what they did there. And I can only speculate that they might have been involved, that they might have known, but this is just speculation.
Okay.
So I make a distinction between speculation and facts.
Okay, very good. Now,
I would really like to urge listeners to go and demand from any person who has the guts to accuse Muslims of the 9/11 crime, to demand of that person to substantiate his allegations with a proof.
Okay.
And if he does not do so, publicize an apology.
Now, let's go back to the United Nations. Do you think the United Nations can investigate this crime?
Now, okay, let me clarify about the role of the special rapporteur. The special rapporteur will has probably gotten my report, my submission. He has the duty of taking this submission and asking the government, which is accused of having violated human rights, ask that government for explanations. So if the special rapporteur is going to do his job, he will send questions to U.S. government based on my submission. And then he will have to report about those answers to the Human Rights Council. This is all what he can do. But by doing that, he will inform the members of the Human Rights Council about the U.S. responses to these questions. This is what he can do. These are the limits of his mandate.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you really think the United States is going to allow that?
Well, This is this I don't know, and it is depending. Of course, the United States may simply refuse to answer his questions, or the special rapporteur may even be so fearful of his position that he might even not wish to make these questions. But this is not my problem. I did my job, which is to bring to the attention of the special rapporteur, on the basis of his mandate, circumstances which require his intervention.
Okay. And then okay, if they investigate, of course it's been 8 years or 7 years since the incident or the crime, and a lot of evidence are not really there, and a lot of people probably and let's say we find out that it was not Al-Qaeda, it was not the Arabs who did it, but it was some type of an organization, a government organization that wanted a reason to go and attack Iraq, to destroy it, so we can have the Middle East that we're looking at now, and the Middle East to come in the next few years. So what? What will that do for American people here? Okay, whoever did it for a reason. That's not the reason they told us, but they had a pretty good reason, because we want to control that part of the world. So what? What difference does it make? Okay, sorry Muslims, it wasn't you.
Well, I think that if the American people will become aware that their own government has been killing 3,000 people, most of them Americans, I think people would be lynching their government. I think that they will demand accounts of all the mass media for having lied for years to the people.
Big deal. The mass media and everybody who did it, they work for the same guy.
I understand, but I think the ordinary citizen in America, when they would be aware that the authorities and the media and even university professors are all, in fact, have been trying to cover up this kind of crime, I think people would realize that they have to take their destiny in their own hands. This is what democracy is all about.
You've seen what this democracy did in Texas when they went into that community and confiscated or kidnapped every child in that community. And if you try to, this truth movement that you are part of, and I consider myself as part of, if we get closer to that, then all of us going to be rounded up for helping the enemy. And the media will cover that. They're gonna say this lunatic in Iceland and this lunatic in both of them are Palestinians, and the one in Louisiana, one in Iceland, and everybody else. So who cares?
Well, I tell you, you see, I'm not a young man anymore. I believe still that speaking up the truth is the only solution for any person who wants to be able to look himself in the mirror. If you understand the concept of dignity, of self-dignity, of self-respect, you must speak up if you know that the government is lying, that the government is doing wrong things, and especially if the government is even killing your own citizens. I think this is very important for every citizen to be aware of it and to speak up in his own way.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a question completely different from 9/11. It's a personal question. I'm assuming, you were born to a Jewish parent, so I'm assuming you're Jewish, but you're the first Jewish that thinks of himself as a Palestinian. Can you explain that?
Well, I was born in Palestine. I'm sorry. It is written in my birth certificate, the government of Palestine. I'm sorry. This is just a formal, even without even introducing any political thing into that. This is just a formal declaration of where I was born. There was no Israel when I was born. I was born in 1941. So I was born in Palestine.
Do you have an Israeli passport?
No, I don't have an Israeli passport.
Now, how do you,
Palestine.
today's Israel celebrated the 60th anniversary. How do you feel about that?
Well, as you described me as an anti-Zionist who is opposed to the idea of a Jewish state, and I am against the existence of a Jewish state. I am also against linking religion with state. A state is an authority which has to regulate the sewage and has to regulate the roads and the airspace and the telecommunication and so on. It should not be linked to a religion. And I think that a religious state or a state which is even based not only on religion but also on belonging to a certain religion is completely contrary to human rights norms as I understand them. So I am against the Jewish state. I'd like to see in Palestine a democratic state, like in the Western democracy, where everybody has the same right, whether it's Jews or Christians or Muslims, and where all the refugees can turn back from Lebanon and Syria and Gaza and so on. That's the country where I was born into. So for me, it is both emotionally and politically very important to stand up against the Zionist state. In any case, I think that the Zionist state or the Israel Jewish state is a threat to the Middle East.
Okay. Now, do you really think that it will come a day that when we will have an investigation in this country, and do you think the changing of the guard would bring that up? Like, do you think maybe Barack Obama would be brave enough, if he is the president, to actually look into 9/11, or is he part of the same political idea or whatever?
Of course, I think that there is, as much as I understand, there is only one candidate which has spoken up in some way.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul, yeah, exactly. So I don't know of any other candidate, but
Okay.
I'm not very much involved into this kind of election politics in the United States.
Very good.
I'm working much more on the legal side and on the question of general of.
I understand. We're going to go to the phones. We have people waiting. Liberty on line 1. Go ahead, Liberty.
Yeah, Dr. T, I want to thank you and your guest, Mr. Elias. And in regards to the 60-year so-called celebration of the rebirth of the nation of Israel, I'm not celebrating it. I feel as though it's a birth of a terrorist state, Zionism. And in regards to our former president and elder statesman, Jimmy Carter, I am appalled that our tax dollars go to annihilate, murder, and maim, and just totally devastate the Palestinians,
Liberty,
now the Lebanese.
Let me ask you this, while we have Elias with us. Do you have a question for Elias on 9/11?
Do I?
Yes.
I'm
What
of the mindset it's the people in the government that control the outcomes of any commission in regards to that, and in regards to not producing a passenger list. And we all know what you can do, Photoshop and crop, and in the government's 20 years ahead of what we have on the internet today.
Okay.
Consequently, I can't see that one of the fellows was listed in a public phone book there in San Diego. Several FBI field agents were on to the so-called and brought it to D.C. Now, after the USS Cole being hit, and I became personally involved in 83 when the Marine barracks were bombed in Lebanon, and lost two good friends of mine on a peacekeeping. But it has been full-blown, non-stop, and I just don't see any end in sight other than red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We ought to come together and respect one another.
Okay. All right, Liberty, thanks.
Well, peace be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for your call. What about, Elias, what about the FBI? And they had all these investigations of Arabs who were here, and they were following them up from Asia all the way to here. I mean, they have all that information. What about that? I mean, is that not something that we can say, hey, that's the proof that these people did it?
Well, first of all, let we distinguish 9/11 from all kinds of other so-called terrorist plots. 9/11, there was not a single person who was brought to justice for direct participation in that kind of crime. There was only one person brought to trial in the United States, in connection, well, in indirect connection to 9/11. It was Zacarias Moussaoui. And this was, in fact, a parody of justice. I followed the trial, and I have even written to the judge, Brinkema, which I find absolutely disgraceful woman, what she did for American justice or injustice. So I've been working on that, trying to see and to expose this monkey business, which was the trial of Zacarias Moussaoui. Now, let me just make it clear. I don't know this Zacarias Moussaoui, and it's not clear to me exactly what kind of guy he is. He may be a completely unreliable person, maybe even a bad person or badly thinking person. I don't know. One thing is clear: he did not murder anybody. He was never charged for any murder. He never assisted any murder, and he was not connected to 9/11. And he was brainwashed probably or something, and now he is spending all his life in prison for nothing, basically. Now, this is the only person who was brought to trial by the United States government in connection to 9/11.
Okay.
So, first of all, let me make that clear. This fact alone should raise questions among anybody who is interested in justice. Now, about the other people, there were a lot of Muslims in the United States who have been charged or accused of something or plotting terrorism. See, most of these people have been released. Some of them have been trapped by FBI agents and induced to prepare. Some gullible, some really stupid guys have been entrapped and instigated by FBI informants to plot some terror acts, and then they were arrested and charged. So we have very, very many, very much dirty business in this kind of work. And of course, there are a lot of Muslims who have been just arrested for absolutely no reason.
Elias, there's one, we only have a few minutes left, but there's one question that always boggled my mind. I know that Pakistan is well known for its flight schools, and in Pakistan, these people, Al-Qaeda, whoever, they very much had free in and out passage of Pakistan, and it's much, much cheaper and much better to train pilots in Pakistan and bring them over here where they already know how to fly 737s and 757s. And it always, we kind of thought about this, why in the world, I mean, they were there in Afghanistan, supposedly, with hundreds of them or thousands of them, and Pakistan is only next door with many flight schools. Why in the world didn't they train over there?
It is very simple. The answer is extremely simple, you see.
Because they don't even exist.
It's very simple. The answer is very simple. Look, there were 19 people whom the United States government accuses of 9/11. These people did not board any of these planes, but these people were patsies whose role was to lay down a trail of evidence by going to learn to fly in the United States, by being arrested for speed driving.
Good explanation. Yeah.
They had to be visible within the United States in order that a trail of evidence could be mounted and a whole story could be elaborated about their going from one place to the other, traveling to Las Vegas, traveling here.
And that's basically all we have. It's just a trail of where these people went and where they lived and where they studied.
Exactly. Now, if they would have trained in Pakistan, there would be much more difficulty to have that kind of story being elaborated, this legend elaborated.
Very good.
So one part of the story is to hire these people, bring them to the United States, give them visas. In fact, most of these people got visas which they were not even eligible to get because they did not fill the forms correctly. But they were imported by the American intelligence agencies, imported into the United States. They were asked to learn to fly. They were asked to do this. They were asked to do that, to rent cars, even to be arrested, in order that the FBI could then create a whole story out of nothing.
Right.
So I would like to finish this kind of interview by urging anybody who is listening to really stop believing that there were any Muslims or any Al-Qaeda involved. And if Al-Qaeda was involved, yes, Al-Qaeda may have been involved.
10 seconds.
But only as a department of the CIA.
Very good. Elias, I just wanted to say thank you very much because we're completely out of time, and it has been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have talked about 9/11 a lot, but, again, we will continue talking about it. We will continue refreshing this in your mind because if we solve 9/11, we can solve a lot of things if we solve 9/11. And, one thing that we are being attacked, and probably because of what we are doing, and because of 9/11, we are being attacked economically. And I might add, they are doing a hell of a job because we are losing that battle. We will see, and we'll talk about Barack Obama next time. Good night. See you next week.